Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Special. This is going to be episode 31. I had to think about that one for just a second, see where we were. We took last week off, so welcome back to our Sunday series. And this week, we've got our good friend Jordan back with us. Say hello, my buddy.
Hey, it's good to be back.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back. I have drug Jordan into the wee hours of the night, and we won't keep you up too late. But we got to talk about some JRPGs, and it's been a while, so we got a fun things to talk about. We're going to talk about the big news that broke yesterday with the reveal of Final Fantasy 16. But Jordan, you're also here to talk a little Legend of Heroes. Have you played these games?
I've played a little bit of those games, you could say.
We'll get into that and maybe a few other little things along the way. But we weren't planning on talking about this until it popped up. But I just want to kind of get somebody else's opinion and see what you felt after the big reveal yesterday. Now, were you as surprised as I was that they revealed this?
I was really surprised, and then I found myself thinking, I think I saw somebody's comment too, thinking, why are they working on this, or why are they putting this out when they need to finish up that Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2? And I guess they have multiple teams or whatever. I hope, but I was very surprised.
Yeah, I don't know if it was us that we talked about last time that we thought, Remake would come out and then 16 in a few years at best. And if the trailer's anything to go off of, it looks like they've been working on this thing for a little bit.
It does. It actually looks pretty fleshed out, at least in the video anyway.
Yeah, they haven't commented publicly on how long they've been working on it. The only thing they said was it was a small team at first, and it's a full-fledged team now. And, of course, Square Enix is a giant company, so they can have multiple teams on multiple games. And this is a completely different team that's working on remakes, so it kind of makes sense. But what were your kind of initial impressions when you just saw it today for the first time? So what kind of were your first things that stood out?
Something about the feeling of it sort of made me feel like it was almost like giving me a feeling of Final Fantasy IX, something about it, but a little darker. It's like something about maybe the more medieval themes of it, I think, but just kind of a little bit obviously darker than Final Fantasy IX. That was kind of my general impression. It seemed the combat, I couldn't really tell. It was hard to tell sort of what was going on. I did see some aerial combat in there, I remember, and I don't know if that's easier to control than in Remake was. I don't know if they took the parts of the battle system of Remake and tried to make them better in there. It was difficult to tell because I didn't see any meters or bars or anything. You didn't see that in there, I think.
Yeah, that was, something I've seen pointed out since then is there is no user interface. It is purely just, one, and what we saw was basically one-on-one battles. There was no team elements going on either. My first impression, and I talked about this on the podcast the other day, was it looks just like 14. And that makes sense because it's the same producer that was the director of 14 is working on it. And
okay.
That was actually my first thought, is I thought this was a PlayStation 5 version of Final Fantasy 14, but it is not. And something I've learned about since then, that combat, did you feel like it was maybe more like 15? A little more action-based?
Yeah, it looked a little bit like that, except 15, I don't know if it's going to be in 16, but all I remember in 15 is you could just stop or slow down time, and then all of a sudden you'd be in the air and just shoot towards an enemy or something. And I didn't exactly see that, but something about it looked still a little similar.
Yeah, that was my first feel too, is it felt a lot like 15. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get the slowdown and the pure warps that
warps, yeah.
that was. Now, he was warping around, it was definitely, but something I've learned since then is there another person working on this game is actually from Capcom and worked on the Devil May Cry series. So that kind of shows the influence of that really fast battle system, and it looks almost pure, like a fast action RPG.
It looked very actiony, I will say. That did look very actiony.
Yeah. So, and then another people had kind of pointed out, because it does look like it's one-on-one. They said that when you go back and look at the first clips of, let's say, 15, which was called 13 Versus at the time, or Versus 13, it only showed Noctis as well fighting.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, the team got in there at a later point in time. So I'm really, really hoping that's the case. Like, if it is a one-on-one type of game, I don't know. That's going to be really weird for Final Fantasy.
It'd be like well, I don't want to spoil it. It'll be like a certain battle in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't want to spoil that. That's okay.
It could be like a certain battle like that. Exactly. There's a mobile game that's basically like that, if I recall it. I forget which one Final Fantasy it is. And you only have one party member. So I hope that's certainly not the direction that they're going. And I don't think that it is. But I guess I was happy that the art direction and the feel of it felt Final Fantasy. And you said Final Fantasy 9, which, my gosh, if they're anything like that, then I'll be really happy.
Yeah, it did have that feel. And then even the music, if you notice, there were certain Final Fantasy themes that were either the same or they were just like went from like a major key to a minor key. Like they got it from the original themes. You could kind of sense some of those throughout the video.
Yeah, I was happy with the music, the art, the feel. I guess just the combat was not really doing much for me. And, I felt like it was going to go action. I didn't anticipate turn-based. I mean, we're not going back to that for Final Fantasy, I don't believe. But if we're going action, I would much prefer FF7 Remake as opposed to 15.
I would too, but so you're telling me in the video seeing that our good friend the Marlboro come out with the bad breath didn't excite you?
It was very exciting. That's the parts, that and the summons, that's the parts that's super exciting. But those were in 15 as well. And I still came away not loving that game. And I know we're not going to get remake quality of terms of fighting system because that team, none of those people are working on this game. It is a completely separate beast, and I don't want to completely judge a game off of a 4-minute reveal trailer, but it's kind of hard not to in some ways.
I mean, I don't know if it would help for them to make the side quests kind of more meaningful. Like in 15, it's like, it just felt like, okay, go collect these dog tags or whatever, and then go out in the forest and collect 15 frogs and bring them back to me. I'm like, okay, this isn't helping at all. This isn't helping your cause in this game. So I don't know. I hope they would make those things a little more meaningful. Like in Final Fantasy VII Remake, that Angel of the Slums or whatever, I thought that was a cool side quest. It felt like it fit into the game pretty well.
It did, yeah. I mean, there was a handful of silly side quests in Remake, but
that's true. All right, that's true.
But it's kind of like you said, 15. It was almost exclusively like that.
It was, yeah.
And it just felt like they needed to stretch this game out to feel, some feel. We knew what they were doing with FF7, that they were expanding upon Midgar, and that was one way to do that. I don't know. I mean, I'm very hopeful for this game, but I don't love everything that I've seen so far.
I would say I'm kind of mixed on it, but I mean, if it does go that Final Fantasy IX direction, of course, I'll be pretty excited.
We can hope, and it's no matter what, I'm going to get it the day it comes out. That's just that's just what I do. I'm not, and I will take the good with the bad, and we got a ways. This game is not coming out next year. If you notice at the very beginning of the video, it actually said it's running on a PC emulating PlayStation 5. So
right, yes.
I mean, they're not even using the system to develop it on quite yet. Remake Part 2 is still coming out first.
I'm sorry, so you think this will come out first? I just want to get your opinion.
No. I still in my heart think that Remake Part 2 is coming out next. And then they'll start pushing this because Square Enix is not, whether it's Kingdom Hearts or it's a mainline Final Fantasy, they're not going to put those things too close together. They're certainly not coming out the same year. So it'll have to be at least a year apart.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm just hoping. I'm still a lot more excited for the Part 2 remake, of course. I guess most people are, right? I
don't recall, just from initial impressions on Twitter and Facebook, I don't see near the level of excitement over this as we do over a game that we've seen absolutely nothing of in Remake Part 2. But everybody knows what's coming with that one. We know the next sections of the game. We anticipate what's going to happen, characters that are going to show up, places we're going to go.
Are you sure?
To a certain extent. There has to be some things, right? But yeah, I wanted somebody else's opinions to bounce off of to see if you're kind of feeling that. And that's pretty much what I was expecting. And we'll just have to... I think it'll be a while. They already said it'll be 2021 before we see anything more from this game, so it'll be a while before we even see the next trailer.
I guess you're thinking it comes out like 2022 then or something, or
that's what I'm pegging for Remake Part 2.
I don't want it to be where 16 comes out in 2022 and then we got to wait till 2023 for the Remake Part 2. That would be kind of upsetting.
I'm thinking we get Remake Part 2 2022 and we get FF16 like 2024. If I had to guess, these games just take forever to make.
Yeah, I just feel like I still have trouble waiting. Like sometimes I'll just like randomly be daydreaming and think about, I can't believe I still have to wait so long for this game.
And maybe that, this obviously, like we said, this game looks like it's further along than we would have anticipated. So maybe those things push up by a year. I mean, I would love to say we get Remake Part 2 next year, but we've not seen one single asset from the game. So it's going to be hard to make that assumptions coming out that soon.
It's true. I just think everybody wants to know, of course, what's going to happen to Aerith, and that's the big question. And I just don't know. I can say I don't know. I don't know that it follows the story or not. I don't know. We
won't know until that scene happens, and that's going to be there's so much speculation with what they did with Remake and what path they're going to go and who's going to live and who's going to die. I mean, like we talked about before with Zach, it's just like, wow, what's not going to be able to happen in these games?
It's just weird. Like, I don't know. Do you mind if I get into Remake a little bit, or
no? That's fine. I haven't thought about it in a while, so let's go.
Yeah, I just wonder what they're going to do with Sephiroth too, because it's like if you remember in the original game, it's like you did this thing. I don't know. There's a lot of there's a lot of movies like in Jurassic Park, right? You go through half the movie before you really see dangerous dinosaur like the T-Rex. You've been anticipating this and you've seen signs of it like around, and you don't see him till like the middle, and like the kind of Sephiroth, right? You see up in the Shinra Tower like trail of blood or whatever, and then you just see like evidence that he's been there, and you're it's just foreboding like the entire game. You just don't see him for a long time. But I feel like in Remake, this like they kind of put that away, you know what I mean? He's already there. You kind of have the sense for how he is already. I just don't know if they can scale that back and if he's going to be like the ultimate enemy again, and then they're going to create somehow that sense of foreboding again, or I just don't know how they're going to recreate that if he's going to be the guy,
That's a pretty cool opinion. I've not really thought about it that way before. If he is in fact the ultimate bad guy, because you're right. I mean, he's thrust out there very early, and I think we talked about this before too. He appears to be kind of leveled up. He's not.
Yes, yeah, he's like
he's not low-ranking goon. No. And as well as Aerith, they both appear to know kind of what's going on. So there's some weird stuff going on there. Yeah, I mean, it could be that there's something else that we've got to, fight against some big fate monster or something. I don't know. At the end, we'll just have to see.
I want to do that
again. Why not, right? Let's just keep on going there. But as if they do stuff as far as that goes, I think people will be okay as long as certain things are still in there. If Gold Saucer's done really well.
Oh, yeah.
There's if I mean, honestly, I'd say that's probably the next big thing that people are really hoping is done right. But there's so much that they can do and really flesh out these games. And at this point, I still wonder if it's going to only be a trilogy.
I don't know if it can be or not. I'm wondering if they're still going to if you're going to go to Junon and if you're going to do that thing with the marching, where you have to march exactly like the other soldiers. I wonder if they're going to do that.
I hope so. But, I mean, I did not do that mission very well. But
it was kind of hard.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that were kind of hard in that game. But you got to wonder if like the dolphin, trying to get up there. Those time things just right. There's a lot of little things that may or may not be in there. You talk about characters like Sid. I mean, how is he going to be presented? Is he going to be scaled back in his abusive relationship that he has with Shiria? Was that her name?
I don't remember. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be smoking a cigarette the whole time, and there's a lot of things that are going to have to change, but there's a lot of.
So say maybe they'll make Sid into a woman at a gas station again.
I mean, I didn't really have any complaints about Cindy, but that part was fine about 15. But yeah, Sid they kind of had that same cranky demeanor. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess they did.
He'll have a bunch of bad side missions for you to go do around Rocket Town. No, there's a lot of questions going to happen, and I'd love to sit here and say, yeah, Tokyo Game Show's next week, and we're going to see Remake Part 2. No, we're not going to see anything from it. I don't think.
Yeah, probably not. It seems like it almost seems like in this sort of genre, whenever we're expecting or hoping to hear some news, it usually gets delayed for a while. So I don't know.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, without having big shows and events to unveil things at, it just doesn't seem like. I mean, especially with all the thunder of PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, I don't anticipate that they would try to put their trailer out there against anything like that.
Without you putting out this news that you put out regularly, I think I'd be kind of lost because I don't really get to read necessarily a lot of stuff, and I think I'd be pretty lost. So that does help.
That's my job, is so people don't have to read things. I'll read it for you. Don't worry.
That's easier right now.
That was one of the reasons why I kind of started this a long time ago. It was like, I can't find any of this stuff. Well, okay, I'll just do it then. Okay.
That was a good idea.
It worked out. It's going on next year will be 5 years, so it's hard to believe sometimes.
Wow. Is that as long as Final Fantasy 15's been out?
I think it came out no, I was trying to think what came out around that time when I started doing this. No, 15 came out after that. Dragon Quest and all those fun things. I had some pretty good games to cover there at the beginning. It was fun.
I thought there was a Tales game, Nick. I'm trying to remember what was it that was out then.
See, Berseria was 3 years ago, give or take. Okay. I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look at some of those. They might be kind of painful to go back and look at the beginning ones.
Well, I think that maybe Zestiria was out. I don't know. I really didn't like that game. I'm sorry. I didn't like it. Oh,
I bet you're right. If Berseria was 3 years ago, I bet that was about then when Zestiria came out. And yeah, because that game sucked. That's why you didn't like it.
I didn't like it. I felt I was sitting there and I wanted to be excited about it. And I remember turning to my wife and I was like, you know what? I really, really don't like this. And I just stopped playing it.
I think even my wife had kind of a similar reaction. Was like, you don't like this game, do you? I was like, no. I don't know if I like any part of Edna was a good character. She was kind of funny, and everybody else was just annoying and terrible.
And just even the atmosphere, something about the graphics or the background, it just seemed real depressing, something.
It was kind of ugly. Yeah, that didn't help any. Obviously I don't think it helped it that they were, spirits. They weren't, I guess, humans in your party, and there's only really 2 party members, and you did all the augments and join and stuff. It didn't feel like a Tales experience, I don't think.
It didn't, yeah. I think I'm in Berseria. What's the one character? Is it? It starts with an E. I lost it, but isn't he supposed to be related to something in Zestiria somehow, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could spoil some things. And,
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah.
because that's a prequel.
Yeah.
So yeah, those events directly affect Zestaria. Yeah, yeah, they're important. That was the only way I appreciated it, was because when I got to the end of Berseria, I appreciated a few things in Zestaria, but I still hated the game, so it didn't matter. It didn't affect anything. And you know what's really funny is there's a dedicated group of people that really liked Zestaria, and I just felt,
know. Yeah.
I felt so little things to redeem it. It wasn't worth my time.
No, I mean, I'm thinking with hopefully like a Rise. I don't think that's going to continue any sort of storyline, right? It's going to be its own kind of thing.
It is. It's its own legs. It's a fresh start. I mean, I'm hoping that they keep a few things that we recognize as Tales, but it could be very, very different by the time whenever it comes out. That's going to be a while.
I remember you described, I think when you were reading something about the game when there was more information, coming out, I thought you read something like somebody who making the game, one of the developers might have said that if you see something from far away, they wanted you to actually be able to go there or something. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that was the idea, was kind of like, draw distance. It's kind of like the old Grand Theft Auto adage of, if you see something off in the distance, you can actually go there and visit it. That's the idea in this one. Now, that was a while ago before it got delayed a billion times, so maybe that's not going to be true. We'll have to see, because Tales has really never been about that.
Whoa.
So, but obviously this one's very, very different, and we'll see how different it is. That's another game that's just fallen off the planet. We've not seen anything from it in way too long.
I would like to hear something more about it, but it seems like it might. Well, sometimes it ends up being very sudden, as we know, right? Sometimes you're sitting there, and all of a sudden, you just have this news.
That is true, and that's why I was kind of like, well, surely it's at least going to show up at Tokyo Game Show, and like I said the other day, it's not on the listing of games to be shown, so I don't think it's going to be there at all.
Well, I mean, I would like it if it were. I mean, I know it's maybe people don't want it to be open world, but I would kind of like that idea in a Tales game. I think if you could, if you see something and you could go to it. I know most of them have been pretty confined in kind of sandboxes, as you go through the field.
Yeah.
And like, for example, I think Tales of Xillia really made that to the extreme. I don't know if you remember, but you just were really in these confined areas. And not only that, I think I liked that game actually, but I got tired eventually of the random items everywhere that you could find.
Man,
like you see like a shiny thing and you have to pick up all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God. And I have to say, I actually never finished Tales of Xillia 2 because I got tired of that. I was like, you know what? I don't think I can take this anymore, actually.
I don't blame you at all. Like, sometimes those things, if they're useful things, you don't mind it. But yeah, just, a shiny. Let me go halfway across this map to go pick it up. I think Tales could be more open world. I don't see why that would be a problem, because they've always been pseudo like that. Like, you'd go to each little map section, and it's fairly large. There's some exploration to happen, so they could take that idea and move it a little bit more open per se. But I mean, I liked Exillia 2. Exillia 1 was really, really good.
Yeah, it was a really good story.
I don't know why they chose to take it with the new character. I didn't care for him that much. Luger, he was. I would have preferred a continuation of that storyline with those characters, not this whole new person I'm forced to play with different fighting styles. I didn't care for that either.
Everybody loves Emilia, at least, right?
Oh yeah, Emilia's a great character.
Yeah.
I assume that was going to be more of that story.
That's what I thought too. Yeah,
because they'd never done that before, or only a handful of times as they had a part 2. So why would you not just keep on going with those characters that everybody loved enough to want to have a sequel?
Because they like doing things that we hate.
Yeah, they're pretty good at that. But my fear now, going back to Arise, is this is getting moved to PlayStation 5. At this point in development, it's so far, we haven't heard anything about it. The new systems are coming out in 2 months. There may still be a PS4 version, but I think at this point they'd be smart to move it on to the new system.
I mean, the only reason I would get it, of course, if things like that are just coming out on that system. But I don't always get new systems on day one, especially if I have a huge backlog on, right, as I do now. I have some backlog of so many games. It's like now I'm getting a new system, and then I have these other backlog games. I don't know. I mean, I guess if Final Fantasy 16 is coming out on it, or the Tales of Arise comes out around launch somehow or something like that, then I probably would get it then. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not getting PS5 at launch. I can't afford it, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, I think that's why Arise will shift systems, is it's not coming out for a while. So that's probably when I'm going to look at it. The next, I mean, we've talked about before, my love for Ratchet and Clank knows no bounds. So that's a system seller for me. And then they just announced God of War 2 or Ragnarok coming out for it next year. That's when I buy a PS5, is for those type of games. You know, with new systems, it's usually a while before a good JRPG comes out.
It is. I mean, obviously, if like Persona 6 comes out on it or something, then of course you have to have it.
Oh yeah, and it will. I mean, there's no doubt that it will, but you're talking years from now. I mean, you got 5 and 6 year life cycles for a system, and these games take 3 to 4 solid years of development to make.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll just be a surprise or something. I don't know. I mean, sometimes we get those, so maybe there'll be something just good that we don't know about.
I'll take that. Yeah. While we do this, Jordan, we'll take a brief time out here. We'll come back on the other side, and we will talk about some Legend of Heroes. That sound good?
That sounds awesome.
All right, man. All right, guys. As always, thank you to Anchor for giving us this means to push the podcast out to each one of your ears. And we're back here with Jordan. Are you still with me, buddy?
Still here.
Okay, you didn't run away during the break. I don't know if that was a smart move or not. So we're going to keep you and talk about some Legend of Heroes for a while.
I do like Legend of Heroes, so that sounds pretty good.
Now, is this true that you hadn't played any of the games until we kind of talked about it?
I mean, well, I had played Sky actually the Sky games I played last year.
Okay.
Before, so I had gone through those, but I hadn't heard about it before, which is weird. I have that station TV or whatever that it has like the guts of a Vita kind of thing.
Right.
But I got that thing for Persona 4 Golden so that I could play it on my TV, and then I realized, hey, there's this cool PlayStation store on there, and it's different than the other one. They have PSP games and they got Vita games. Then I saw Trails in the Sky on there, and I was like, "Oh, that looks pretty good." And then I just decided to look up some reviews, and people seemed to. It was great, so I got it, and I got the second chapter, and just kind of all went from there.
Yeah, then I got in with Cold Steel and hadn't played Trails in the Sky until we kind of started talking about it. And, I always knew that it was a series that I should go back and play. And you would have loved to play them in order. Sky, then Crossbell, then Cold Steel. But, this is not a perfect world. And I think Trails in the Sky came out in 2004.
I believe that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'd never even heard of it. Like I said, I heard of Cold Steel 1 when it first came out, and that was the very first time I'd heard of this Legend of Heroes series. So we've both played Trails in the Sky, first and second chapter. You played the third, and I've not.
The third, yeah. Yep.
And I know you really want me to play it. And
I do. I think it is. There's some lore in there that will give you a greater appreciation for some things, and then especially whenever the Crossbell games come out, like whenever you decide to play those, however you decide to play them, there's some things referenced from that game.
And that makes sense. I mean, they put them out there for a reason. You've told me I need to play them. A lot of people online say if you can play it, if you skip it, it's not the end of the world. Whereas it's not. My understanding is the third one is kind of like something about doors and going back and doing stuff. It's not a full sequel, would you say?
I wouldn't. I had seen people say that before. I played it, but I kind of disagree. I think it's more than that. I mean, I think it is really closer to a sequel, and there's some things that are explained that you don't know the explanation of unless you play that game. So I think there's also some things you see happen to some characters in ISC, especially that you're like, oh, geez, I didn't know that was going to happen, or I'm glad I saw that. So
interesting. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that Estelle and Joshua are not the main characters. It is about Father Kevin, correct?
It is, yeah. I mean, he's kind of the central character in that game. But Estelle and Joshua are in the third. I mean, but they're just not the central characters exactly.
Okay. Whereas the first two games, I mean, they'd center around those two characters and their relationship. And
right.
I think that's. I mean, I made the comment the other day when we were texting back and forth that Estelle is my new favorite character in the entire series, and you sort of agreed, but then you said that maybe some of these newer ones in Crossbell have gained your heart a little bit more.
Yeah, I just love that. I love this team of four that you play with in Zero, especially Trails from Zero, and I started even kind of loving them more than Estelle, and that's hard to say because Estelle is actually, this isn't really a spoiler exactly, but Estelle and Joshua, they are in the Crossbell games. But
okay, very cool.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just I really like these four characters, and maybe it's because you start with them kind of in the beginning, and you're just kind of with them the whole time. I don't know, but I just really like them a lot and their interactions.
So unlike both Cold Steel and a lot of Sky, you don't have a party to choose from. It is just the four main characters.
Most of the time it is. You can get some support characters from time to time, but it's not the same as in Cold Steel where you could just, switch out during a battle, like you'd have to switch them for roles ahead of time if you wanted to do that.
Well, like Sky, I mean, once you commit to that team, unless you go back to town, you can't switch them out.
I mean, you just have to exit the battle. You don't have to go back to town to switch them out in Crossbell games, but
gotcha. Yeah. I figured they would have advanced, some a little bit from because I definitely saw an evolution from Sky 1 to Sky 2, and then you see a little bit more in Crossbell, and then by the time you get to Cold Steel, it's almost a different game.
Yeah, it is kind of different, and I wanted to comment on you said something about the chronology of the games. I think, actually, I've seen an argument that says that it's better to play trilogy, then Cold Steel 1 and 2, and then the Crossbell games in 3 and 4.
Interesting.
And that's because, actually, now I'm kind of seeing this now. Actually, the Crossbell games spoil, actually, a lot more of Cold Steel than the Cold Steel games spoil of Crossbell games.
Wow. I know those events go on at the same time.
They do reference, even though Cold Steel wasn't made yet, I guess. I mean, but
no, there's a certain giant event that goes on in Cold Steel 2 that's obviously one of the main parts in the Crossbell games. So that's really interesting the way they did that.
I mean, I haven't gotten to that giant part, but it looks like it's coming because I could see it. They have the image of that in the intro, actually, of Azure now.
Really?
That's where I am right now. I just started those two Azure. I'm like just probably like 5 hours into it or something. I saw that image there already. So, because I had played Cold Steel, I wouldn't have known what that was if I hadn't, but because I played those games, I was like, oh man, so that they are going to explain this. I'm going to get to see why this from this side, from a different perspective.
That's really cool, and I think we're doing an awesome job of not spoiling anything for people. That's not easy to do, but yeah, it's obviously I was speaking chronologic of how they were released, but I guess if you have the option to go back and play them now, we've talked about before. Steam has all the Sky trilogy, so you can pick those up. If you want to play on Vita, you only get the first two games, which is why I went to Steam in the first place in order to play all three, even though I'm not playing all three. Now, if you want to play Crossbell, this is where you come in. Here's your expertise, Jordan. Because it's not simple, is it?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I got it going. I felt like it was worth it, but it was a lot. I'm not the most tech-savvy person with those kinds of things, so I really had to do a lot of search, and I'm sure as you've heard, at least on this podcast, GeoFront, put out really, really, really good translation of to zero, and they actually help quite a bit. Like they give you, if you just Google search GeoFront Trails to Zero, you go to the website there, they really do walk you through how to do it.
Okay.
Which entails you buying the game you actually are buying the game still. You're buying it from the Japanese website, and then give you instructions about how to basically install their patch over it. And they give you instructions if you don't understand, reading Japanese, then you translate it and everything. But it just took a bunch of work, I think. And I also, I played it using Steam. So I did like a Steam overlay so that I could use my PS4 controller with the game. And
okay.
And I hooked it up HDMI to my TV. So, I just was playing it, and I turned I like to play on consoles. So I even put the computer somewhere else so I couldn't really see it. So it just felt like I was sitting there. It felt like I was sitting there playing just an RPG on console, which is pretty awesome. I really like that a lot. But
oh, cool. Took a
bit of minute setup. Yeah.
I'd say so. Did it stretch it out, putting it on the television? Was it made to be played on a computer?
It looked really good on the TV.
Okay.
The one thing I'll say is, and a lot of people have issues with the frame rate. Like it was pretty frustrating at first. Like I had to really experiment with settings for that. It was really, really lagging to the point first where it was just unplayable. And I actually bought a new cheap PC just to play this game, actually, because I didn't have one anymore. But it was almost unplayable at that point. So I experimented with some things. There's like a thing called VSync on there I turned on, and then I turned the frame rate actually back to 30, I think, and then it fixed it. It was like normal. And there's a turbo mode installed too, so you can have that on, and it makes it feel pretty great. So once I got that set up, it was smooth from there.
Okay, so you basically just had to do some little tinkering with it. Probably a lot more than the average, obviously more than the average console players used to do.
Oh, yeah.
And even more than, a Steam players used to, because that's been, even that was a bit of a learning curve for me playing games on Steam. There's a lot of settings you've got to get just right. It took me a while to get Trails in the Sky to look like a good game. It didn't look so hot when I first tried it out, but well, that's cool. And like I said, GeoFront, they've done Zero, and they are working on AO right now, right?
Yeah, and I did want to say one more thing about the Zero. They didn't, I think because of some copyright reasons, they did not put the voices in the game, though. So I ended up, I don't want to get in like trouble, so I'm not going to say how I got the voices, but I got the voice files and I installed them. You can figure out how to do that if you search, but I installed them and it worked perfectly. I was able to hear all the voices in the game, which I do highly recommend if you can, because I played it partially without, not used to it, like it was fine, but then when I got the voices in there, I was like, wow, this is pretty great. Yeah, it did add something to it, so I do recommend that if you can figure that out.
I'm assuming that's the Japanese voices.
It's the Japanese voices,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was a dub for those.
No. Near even the emotions, and I do understand some Japanese, so that did help. But if you don't, it doesn't matter. Just being able to hear the tones and the emotions and the different expressions, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is weird going back and playing Sky, which has a handful of voices for like the S crafts and some of the crafts that you get a few words in there, but by and large, there's, especially after playing with Cold Steel and all the voiceover in it, it's hard to go back to these non-voiced games. A little different.
It has a weird feeling sometimes when it happens, yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of I felt like I was kind of a teenager, or in my early 20s again, playing those games and really enjoying it, because obviously that's when that game came out. And it was a product of its time. So what were some of the differences from Sky to Crossbell in terms of the improvements to the game, would you say?
Well, they did have the option. So it's not quite like Cold Steel. You know how you could kind of quick travel a lot of different places?
Yeah.
Kind of an in-between of that. So now as opposed to not really being able to do that at all you can, in Crossbell City, you can They have quick travel to all parts of the city, but you still can't quite quick travel everywhere. But I mean, you can go to, they have a quick travel option. They added something called combo crafts, where, and I don't know why they didn't keep these actually, because they're pretty cool, but you can actually team up. You learn them as you go through the game. You don't get it right away, but you're able to team up with another character, kind of a la Chrono Trigger almost, to do a cool kind of team. It's not 3 people, I guess, but a cool team, a cool team attack. That looks really cool, and you both have to spend 100 CP on it. You both have to have 100 CP to use it.
Oh, okay. So it's not like second chapter where you had those combo crafts that were going on with 2 people. I actually never used those. I didn't like them, but so yeah, this was something that was more of an S craft than if it used 100 CP.
Yeah, so it definitely was more of it's pretty much an S craft combined with 2 people. Like, I would say some of them have done just as much damage too as like a 200 CP S craft.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that was really cool. I enjoyed using those quite a bit when I got used to them, and it does take some time to learn them for every combination of characters. Like, sometimes you have to find an item somewhere, to learn it, or it's not necessarily automatic. Or sometimes like kind of a la Steel, they have the bonding events. Maybe you have to do a certain bonding event with a certain character to get it.
Yes. Okay. That sounds like an excellent addition. And having traversed Crossbell in Cold Steel 3, that's a giant city, so some fast travel would be very helpful. I'm looking forward, and I haven't played 3, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what it looks like then. Now that I'm seeing it now, I bet it's something I'm pretty excited about. That was the only part I regretted, because I could tell what they were doing, like in like flashbacks and like certain characters. I mean, Yuna is from Crossbell, so they kind of used her as the guide, and you could tell, like, if you had played those games first, it would have had a completely different feel to it.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to get a ton more out of it than I did.
It's given me a lot of other perspective. Like, all I heard was the Erebonian side before, and and I knew they were going to annex Crossbell or whatever, and I just all I knew was that perspective. But now I can see from the Crossbell citizens' point of view, I'm like, oh, this is kind of a lot more gray areas than I thought. And just like some of the political stuff going on in Crossbell, you really get to understand that, and some stuff with like the mafia and everything, and it's just. Pretty interesting. It gives you a lot of different perspective if you played even some of Cold Steel.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool to think about how you've got all these games that are kind of tying in to each other in this overarching narrative. And especially with Cold Steel 4, you're going to have characters from all the games show up. So I would highly recommend anybody to go back and play these games. You can catch them on sale on Steam. You don't need a very powerful PC to play these. My laptop is, it's probably like 7 years old, and it plays them no problem. And yeah, the the Crossbow ones are a little bit more work, and Geofront is almost done with part 2, so maybe they don't have to go through as much trouble as you've had to in order to play AO, right?
I see that. So they are on, if you go to the Geofront website, it looks like they're on their second editing pass, and they finished the first editing pass. And they had, I think I missed it, but they had a chance for you to submit your treasure chest submissions. I think I might have seen that. But
I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, so in Zero, I don't know if they did the same thing before, but the treasure messages are just, the chest messages are just out of this world. It's just hilarious. Like, I just can't even believe it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people ended up contributing for this one. I guess that's one thing I'm not getting to experience in the version I'm playing now, is like, there are some messages, but I'm sure they're not going to be as off the wall as some of those from the Geofront version.
Absolutely. That's, I didn't know what I was missing, because that's the one thing I wish was in Cold Steel. But having played all these, I'm like, well, what else could they possibly say? Every treasure chest says something different. And so you've got 3 skies, you've got 2 cross spells. What more could they possibly have said in Cold Steel? I'm sure they were just like, guys, we've said it all. We can't go any further.
Maybe it's just getting too hard to think of it. I mean, I don't know if did you remember from Sky and in the Cold Steel games, Anton and Ricky? Did you ever follow their kind of?
Yeah, I picked up on those too. I was like, oh, I know these guys. They're just
sobbing person.
Oh yeah, I was like, I think I ran into them the first time and I didn't pay attention, and then the second time I was like, oh wait, those guys.
But they have a treasure chest. They even reference in something about them. I'm not going to spoil what it says because it's great. Yeah.
I got to the point where I was kind of only doing the major treasure chest to look in there and what they said, just because there's so much. I mean, they spent probably a year writing things to put treasure chest messages in alone.
I can't believe how much writing. Like, if you haven't played these games, I mean, the amount of writing that goes into these games, it's just easy. I mean, I think it's just the world building aspect of the entire series, like the entire arc. If you really get to go back and play these games, it makes it worth it because they really build. All the NPCs have a story, and you start getting attached to them too, and you want to see what happens to them and all these little stories, and then they say something different. Like every time any small event happens, they say something different that's reacting to whatever the event is. So it's just world building with all these characters, and the writing behind that is probably just insane.
I can't imagine how long it would have taken to do one of these games. They're so rich, and that's the best thing. Like the side quests bring you into those side characters' worlds, NPCs, and yeah, you start caring about these. Especially, I mean, just in Sky, I mean, you go back every town you visit again in the second one, and you really build upon those relationships. And I almost blurred this out, but I didn't. You will definitely run into, I guess, a couple, but one character in particular will show back up in Cold Steel 3. And I didn't know who she was. And it's like, oh, having played Sky now, I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I never put two and two together. So if you haven't played Cold Steel, go back and play these first. You'll get more out of it. I wish I could have done that to begin with, but I didn't. And we're getting closer and closer. Now, you've got to get on the ball, dude. You still got Cold Steel 3.
That's upsetting to me, honestly. I'm not going to make that. I think I'm just not going to make that cutoff.
You're going to be lucky if you get done with AO in time to then go to 3, and then you'll be in Cold Steel 4 by like January or something.
I'm not going to watch any videos or anything, that's for sure. I'm going to avoid all of it.
You're going to avoid the podcast for a while, too.
You just have to do your job and not spoil anything.
I try very hard to. Man, there's never been a series that's harder to do with than this. It is. There's so many giant things going on. Just to talk about little things is hard sometimes.
I know. I'm trying. I mean, I had so much more time during the summer. I was trying to appreciate it because it's the most I think I've ever in a long time gotten to play RPGs so much. Like I was grinding through 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, a day, and I was just flying through Cold Steel and Cold Steel 2. I'm like, this is great. I'm gonna finish all these games, and then work started up a lot more again, and I just slowed down to a slow trickle. Now I'm down to like 1-2 hours, at most a day. So it's gonna be a little tough.
It is, but that's life. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. Those 8-9 hours. I mean, that's the stuff of like middle school summers.
Stuff of dreams.
That's the stuff of unemployment. That's what it is. I recall a few months of that. I got all kinds of gaming time. I gotta go to work. No. Once reality sets back in, you get the family, you get a job. There's an hour or two. Yeah, that's about it.
Then you get that maybe Sunday you can play for longer, instead of Saturday or whatever. But
yeah, every once in a while that pops up.
The Azure, like I just felt I probably should have waited maybe for GeoFriend, but I just felt like I couldn't wait. I'm just I'm engrossed in these games. I'm just going to play them all in a row. I don't feel burned out. I feel like I'm just continually interested, what's going to happen. And then I will warn you, if you want to get Azure before it actually comes out from GeoFront, it is some work. And now I'm really having a great time, but it's just more work. Like you have to really do some searching. I can't tell you, at least I don't think I'm allowed to tell you where I got it. And I got it, you can get things that have all the voices, and then there is kind of like a lag in some of the games. So I had to install this other program, Cheat Engine, to make it speed up the game. So now it runs at normal speed and it works great, but it's just, you have to kind of, you have to do some research to figure this stuff out. And I think there's people who are like, well, I know all about this stuff. It's easy for me, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me.
It doesn't sound easy. Like the Geofront one doesn't sound easy. And I'm a guy who works on a computer all day long, but I don't know, like, I'm kind of like yourself, I guess. I don't know, like, the technical stuff. And it sounds like you had a lot to learn to play these games. But I think you made the right move, because while Geofront is pretty far along, there's really no idea when it's going to be coming out.
Yeah, I didn't know. It was just unknown. So I feel like I got to play this game. And I will tell you, I think it was Friday night. I think it took me 2.5 or 3 hours to set up this game, like to get everything.
Holy cow.
And I was up late too. Like I was really tired from the whole week, and I was up real late by the time I got it all installed. And I did get it installed with the Steam overlay, so I'm playing with my PS4 controller. The button layout's kind of weird. I had to get used to that, but it's fine actually. It's more like a Japanese style layout, I think, which is fine.
That's interesting.
It is really good. The music is just awesome. Like I love, I think the music in all these games is good, but the music is just awesome. I really like it a lot.
I'm still hoping that since Falcom put those games on PS4 in Japan, that we do get a port of it, an official port. They kind of said that's what they wanted to do. And for people like myself, that would be the easiest way to accomplish this. But they've not really said anything about it coming west. And it may not be. I don't know. Of course, they'd have to be translated, and we know how NES America likes to drag their feet on translation. So
you should just pay Geofront to get there. I mean, the translation's great. I mean, it's just they did a great job. I can't believe how great a job they did. It's incredible.
I think I even got into a message board about that one time, and there was all these things like that they just wouldn't. Like, Falcom won't do that. I'm like, well, why not? It's done.
It's great. They did it quality. It's not like some lame, like kind of amateur job. I think that to me, they did a professional job with that game. I can't say enough about how good a job they did. I mean, it's great.
And that's not just your opinion. That is pretty universal, the acclaim for Geofront and their work. And that's why they were allowed to do the second one as well. And it's not like NAS America has done the greatest job of all time. Why that we need to do that again? I guess the voiceovers would need to be done, but just take that translation and do the voiceover and cut it in half, right? That seems like the smart thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't do that. I mean, something that scares me about Geofront, the second game though, the Trails to Azure, is that the accessibility of the actual original game. Like for Zero, you can buy the original Japanese game totally legitimately on Japanese site, but apparently you can't for Azure. Like they said on the Geofront site, it's only available on Joyo Land. A site. It's like a Chinese site, and apparently there's some things in it, like right now, that if you try to install it, it'll like mess up your computer until they get it sorted out. So they said you can buy it now, but do not install it till we get the patch sorted out. So it just kind of scared me about it a little bit.
That sounds extremely scary. Yeah, anytime you're dealing with downloading things from Chinese websites, that's going to be risky, to say the least.
Yeah, so I just wasn't. That was also sort of another uncertainty. I mean, they said they're working on getting that figured out so it's accessible and you can just follow steps to do it. But still, I was like, I think I'm just going to try to play this now.
Yeah, that seems like the right move.
Not that what I did wasn't risky either, I guess, but
there's always risk involved. That's just the way these things go. So I think we've done a pretty good job of selling this one. If people aren't sold on Legend of Heroes by now, I don't know what else we could say, to be quite frank.
I don't know. I mean, it's like if you ever read like a long series of books that you just have to see, like, go to the next book. It's kind of like that. You're in this other world and you're really, really in it. Like, I think compared to other RPGs, it really put you in it. You get really invested. And I think that's one of its strengths.
I don't think it's like any other series though, because with Final Fantasies, Dragon Quest, Personas, they have certain elements that are the same, but we're talking about one continuous connected story with
Right,
these
over like
games.
9 games.
Yeah, I mean, why? Nothing else is like that. Like, you're lucky if you get a sequel that has the same characters in it, like we talked about with Azalea earlier. But this is such a big, giant game, and we know it continues on past Cold Steel with Hajimari, and we know there's another game coming past that with new characters. So when you're kind of signing up for a big, big experience, but it's something that is just unheard of in games. It's like you said, it's much more like a movie or a book series than a gaming series.
I think so too, and the payoffs are unbelievable. Like when you get immersed in it and you've stuck with it, I mean, the payoffs when certain things happen in the games, it just feels it's more incredible than other games, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the amount, I talked about like a snowball rolling down a hill and gaining into a giant, more and more just with Cold Steel. Like you fall in love with these characters in 1, they grow up in 2, 3, everything goes crazy, and then we still got 4 to look forward to. There's nothing else like that in gaming. There are some series, like if you want to take like God of War, Kratos and watching that character grow up, or Uncharted with Nathan Drake. I mean, you do see that in some game series, but in terms of JRPGs, this is very, very unique, and nobody else is even trying to do anything like this.
So what are you doing if you're not playing these games? Good.
I mean, I guess I could respect you if you tried it and didn't like it, but what they are doing is kind of the pinnacle of what old JRPGs used to be, combined with cutting, really good graphics and gameplay nowadays. It's kind of the things that got me into the series in the first place, and it hasn't changed. We talked about Final Fantasy 16 and how much it's changed, that we don't like those changes. They have kept a lot of them, they made them better, and it keeps getting better with every game that comes out.
I could tell, because I don't know if I mentioned, I did start, before I got it in my mind that I needed to play the crossbow games like now, I did start a half hour after Cold Steel 2. I immediately started like a half hour Cold Steel 3, and I could see how awesome it was already going to be, and even some of the smoothness of the combat. But I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm really missing out here. I feel like I got to go back and I got to try to play these games. I said, I know this could be annoying to try to install them or whatever, but I'm just going to do it. So I'm on pause with that right now, but I can't wait to get back there again.
Yeah, that was such a leap from 2 to 3, and graphics in the interface, everything was faster and cleaner and better. And I do really think you made the right call though, because that is Cold Steel 3 is crossplay. Like, and the characters, you are doing yourself a favor by knowing those people better than I did. That's like, hey, those guys look pretty cool. Stuff's going on, but I don't I don't really have an emotional attachment to them.
I think that's why I remember, of course, you remember the Virtus Mont or whatever in Cold Steel 2. Like, that's why I feel like now it means more to me, because it didn't when I played it, but I mean, now I can kind of get what was going on even more now.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's one reason why I wanted to play Sky so much, because as soon as I saw Estelle show up in the trailers for 4, I'm like, oh, this is definitely something I need. I need to know this Bright family, and why Cassius is in such high regard. Can't wait to finally bash some heads with him, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good times for sure.
It is good times. I mean, it's always there's always, of course. Oh, I forgot to mention, of course, there's still fishing in the crossbow games.
Okay, good.
It's the same system, kind of as Sky, where you just tap the button, and you hear the little sound.
Yeah, I
just once,
I still couldn't do it. I don't know why. I could, fishing was super simple in Cold Steel. I never caught a single thing in Sky. I don't know. Maybe my volume was down too low.
Yeah, you have to listen really close. Like, my wife was in the room a couple times when I was fishing, and then like she'd be talking, and then I'd be like, "Wait, shh." And I'd have to get like real close to the TV, and then I'd hear it, and then get the fish or whatever. And she respects. I mean, she doesn't play fishing in this game, but she plays like Stardew Valley with the fishing, so she likes that kind of stuff. But
okay.
I like this system though. I don't know if you agree, but I like the system still. If you can catch the fish, I like the Sky system better than Cold Steel though, because I don't like freaking out having to tap the button as fast as possible to get the fish. It makes me feel real tense.
And switching buttons that you have to press and know which one it's going to be. Yeah, it's a workout for sure.
It is like, and even to get the right speed, a couple of times I actually have to place my controller on the floor and then tap it real hard with my index finger. Like,
yes.
That helps. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. Once I stop with the thumb completely. It's put it down on my lap and tap it with your pointer finger. Definitely.
It's just brutal. And then I think I had L2 in that game by accident set to the turbo in Cold Steel. So then sometimes when I had it set that way, it would turn on the turbo while I was fishing. And then, of course, the fish would get away because I couldn't tap that fast.
Oh, no.
So I had that. So every time I wanted to catch something difficult, I actually had to change the button settings and change turbo, so it wasn't L2. And then I would do that thing where I put it on the floor and try to tap it fast.
Oh man, I'm gonna if it isn't already, I'm gonna have to make Turbo R2 just because I got so used to it in Sky, and I actually used it in the Sky series. I never used it in Cold Steel. I don't know why.
Oh, you didn't? I liked using it.
I just it wasn't something I wanted to do, but yeah, I think I will now. I know how to do that properly, so it still took me 85 hours to beat second chapter, so it didn't speed up too much.
I'm not surprised. That one is longer, obviously, than the first part. I mean, in the turbo, you definitely want to use turbo if you play these crossbow games. Even with Geofriend, you will want to use the turbo.
It has its uses, definitely.
Sometimes when you just want to walk somewhere faster, I will say I still got tired of the walking in crossbow, and same in Sky, where I got tired of the walking to the same place, except especially in SC when they're like, go test out this pair of shoes. Go run to these 3 towns, really far. I was thinking, I loved the game. I was like, I don't want to do that right now. It's so much walking.
It's so much walking. When you have to go do the when that certain event happens, you have to go and revisit every town in the loop.
Oh my god!
I was like, you're not going to make me do this, right? Oh yeah. We get to go the entire country. And I mean that was one full night of playing and just running. Try to avoid the monsters that were so far underneath your level you didn't need to fight them anyway. So
you just don't even want to bother at that point with the battles. You just don't want to even bother.
Oh no! I mean, if I didn't have Eagle Eye and Haze equipped, so I would see them and be able to avoid them, I didn't want to do it.
I can't remember now. In Sky, they didn't have the thing though where you could hit the lower level enemies from behind and then hit them again and they would turn to the Sepith. I don't think they had that yet, did they?
I don't recall that. No.
They do have that in the crossbow games. That is kind of cool. You can get some Sepith really quick, I guess.
Yeah,
something good.
I'm a big fan of instant kills if it's so underleveled. That just makes sense to me.
Yeah, sometimes you're kind of in the flow of whatever you're trying to do, and you're like, okay, I don't want to stop to do this battle right now. It's just not important.
No. Well, if you're gaining 2 experience and it takes 1,000 to gain a level, that's really that's not doing anybody any good.
Yeah, it's kind of ends up being a waste of time. Or I hate that when you are trying to avoid them and then you just somehow mess up and run into them by accident. I'm just oh.
Or they somehow cut off your third party member and now they get a preempt on you.
That's so annoying.
That's the only part, because I loved being able to see all the party members, right? Because you don't get that in Cold Steel. But it does have that drawback of especially if you're trying to run past them, they can always clip you at the very end.
You're in 0, you're a chain of 4, so imagine that.
Yeah. That's that's why you're in Sky. I mean, you've got all 4 of them on there. So
that's right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, but it's just Rain or whoever you want running around in Cold Steel. I do kind of miss that. But what are you going to do? Nothing. They're not changing that for part 4, I'm sure.
No, but I don't mean to complain. It's just I'm nitpicking here. I mean, it's still doesn't really take away from the game. I mean, it's still just fantastic. But I just I think that's something we run across in a lot of RPGs. Those types of nitpicks.
Oh yeah, there's no such thing as perfect. You have to have something to nitpick about.
Yeah.
All right, Jordan. Anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap this thing up?
Just get out there and play the Legend of Heroes games. You need to do it as soon as possible.
Absolutely, yeah, and try to do it in order if possible, but if not, then I completely understand it. I mean, there's plenty of people that they've only got a console. You know, they don't have a computer. They don't have the money to go out and buy a cheap one, and that's the reality of the situation. So hopefully Falcom eventually brings these things over like they said they were going to, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. But you're not going to be caught off guard this time, Jordan. You need to why don't you close it out for us, all right, buddy?
All right, everybody, don't forget to get back out there and level up.